Hi, this is Gamu from Stepping Stones to Success. I'd like to welcome you for this episode where we will be talking about human resources in Africa with Muonga Kaunda from Zambia. She will be sharing about her experience as an accountant and as a human resources professional to encourage growth with a heart. We want to have growth and development with sensitivity. Her insight will be amazing for anybody who recognizes the value of both management and employees, how to have growth with empathy, how to develop both worlds, harmony and the strengthening of both arms of business, the employee and management. Just have a look. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I certainly had fun. It's wonderful for us to be able to have this opportunity to just meet up and to chat about a very, very important issue, which is human resources. And I'm very, very honored that you're just willing to share your knowledge, have this conversation as we record it, and then we'll see through the editing. It's really came out recently. I'm not sure if you've been following Zimbabwe. We had one of the biggest organizations locally closing like 15 shops, but most of the challenges emanated from poor management. But the people who to suffer the consequences are the common worker who actually makes the organization a success, which is really so. It's such a pity that corrupt management, poor management priority can have such an impact on society, on the organization, when really human resources is the very key for success. And if utilized correctly and if invested in correctly, we would see such a transformation in our nations if people did that. So if you'd like to just share about yourself, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. So my name is Muonga, obviously, as you know. I've been in human resources for close to, I think, 15 years now. My journey started as an accountant. That's how it all started. Because then in our time, I'm sure you remember this, it was either you're an accountant or a doctor or, was one of those things. But HR was never really a role that sort of we went to school for, right? So I started accounting. I got my Bachelor of Accounting Science. I then joined an amazing organization where I was sort of allowed to explore different roles. And one of them happened to be HR. By then, there was something called employee engagement and employer brand that had just started sort of coming up in the world, which is what we're talking about now, the importance of people and how to internally communicate with people. How do we ensure that we remain an employer of choice? What are we doing for our people, basically, and engaging our employees to ensure that we are speaking together and creating a workforce that is conducive for everybody to work in. So this, notion, I guess you can say, topic became quite hot. So they decided to open a department of that. And I, being the bubbly person, was chosen to do so, to spearhead this important pillar, which today has now become really important and I think critical for business, productivity. I'm a firm believer in employee engagement. I'm a firm believer in employer brand, because I believe that once an employee buys into the organization, they'll give you 100%, 110% input. And of course, that also translates your output, right? What you put in, what you put out. And, investing in our people through obviously training development is all well and good, and I agree with that. But also very important is ensuring that employees are in a good workspace, allowing them to speak about things they might be uncomfortable about, or, making a good work environment for people and allowing them to sort of shape that together with the organization, I think is very important to me. personally. And that also translates to being an employer of choice eventually. Yeah. That's my journey, my small journey. Yes.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you came from an accounting background, because so many of those harsh anti-human resources decisions come from that segment of
Not true. Not entirely true.
Well, I think the perception is, by and large, that the numbers peoples are more focused on statistics rather than on the human element. Yet it is so integrated, it's so related,
Yes.
that if we invest in people, we will, like you said, have them invest in the organization, believe in the organization, sacrifice for the organization, and be willing to be partakers of its journey, whether it's going up or it's going down. As we see in some countries where people are willing to receive a pay cut for their organization to survive, but it's because the organization at one point also invested in them, and they know goes up, we also go up. And I think that's something that would be so pivotal for us to have in Africa, as we're talking about productivity and growth and the next generation and a large population that is really very, very young, that requires us to have that growth. One of the things that we did discuss is, how do you share this? How do you, in a meeting, share this to the people who make decisions? How do you share the importance of human resources, human training, investment into the very core of this organization, which is the people? Because it's the people who are innovative, who are also going to connect with the customer, is the people who are going to sell the items or the product. It's the people who are going to share about the organization and really lobby for its brand. How do you share that it is worth it on the financial aspect? Because really that's the bottom line. The bottom line.
Well, first of all, you have to. Being a finance person sort of helps me along, as we're saying, because obviously I can sort of come up with some nice, as they call them, sexy numbers. You tend to sort of always look out for things that are I always think of quality first, and then of course something that's cost effective. I guess that's where my finance background helps me. But getting buy-in from your management team is very critical. And starting with, first, of course, the MD, right? The organizational head is very important. Once they understand the importance of human resources, that the cornerstone of the organization is that, and it's by pointing out, and this is where the numbers factor comes in. Do you know that, for example, I'm going to make a very silly example. For example, let's talk about time and attendance, right? If you notice, I don't know, during COVID time, there was this thing about more flexi hours.
Yes.
And people sort of being able to come in, let's say, between 8 and 9 or whatever, and you're not so stringent about timekeeping. People, I'm not sure the stats are, and I should actually look up it, but I do remember when I was selling the policy at one of the organizations I was working for, when we were doing the working from home policy and for coming back, was that we found that people were coming back more on time when they were given a little bit more time to sort of come in. I don't say 7:30 on the dot. If not, you're not there, then it's this, right? We found that we said, oh, your time is between 8 and 9, for example. People will show up at 8. It was the weirdest thing. Just, I think when people are sort of put in a box, you sort of limit them. They tend to sort of, I don't know if it's rebel, if that makes any sense. So you go there with your facts and say, look, what we've realized is that in other countries or in other spaces, or people have already done this, this is what their stats are. I would like to give it a try here. Maybe pilot for a month or whatever. No, Muonga, this, that, the other. Also some fights and stuff. And you sort of negotiate your way through it. And eventually then they'll be, okay, fine, we'll try it for a month, let's try it for 3 people and let's see how it goes. Yeah, so it's about getting buy-in and making them understand, and sharing best practice. And that's what it is. You look at the top organizations in the world, you look at Microsoft, you look at Google, you look at, I'd love to mention JTI, being a top employer themselves.
Yeah.
And a former employee of JTI. But those are good examples of employers who have taken best practices and put them in the organizations and have seen really good results when it comes to employee engagement. So it's about showing examples and saying, look, I've been in this organization. This is what happened. I'd like to give it a try here. So, and selling, I guess that's what employer brand is all about, right? Selling what that employer does to the other organization. Say, look, this is what they do, and I think it's worked really well. Yes, we've got a budget constraint. Maybe we can try and do this in this way instead of that way, and then slowly build. Once they start seeing what you're implementing actually works, the rest is magic. It's like every time you ask for something, they're like, okay, yeah, go ahead. It works. Yeah. So that's how I did. Please don't sell my secret. Yeah.
No, it's a wonderful secret that should be used by absolutely every person in that field. What are the key challenges that you see in Africa, looking at your experience in human resources management, as well as interaction with the staff, and challenges of the staff itself, and also challenges in the relationships that you have experienced that you think, you know what, could have been easily solved by certain key principles that you learned of?
One of the key challenges I think I've faced is people only thinking the business. I believe in thinking the business, I really do, but we can always also put employees first or people first as well. I believe those two can work very well together, but it's either that they're very people-centric and it's only about the people, or they are very business-centric and it's only about the business. So not being able to balance the two and obviously make a symbiotic relationship that works really well and eventually will, breed 100% productivity, if not more. The other challenge I've experienced is employees feeling entitled. So that's now they want the organization to be completely employee-centric. This is what I want. I work for you. Yes, you do, but you get paid a month then, right? So these other things are sort of extra add-ons and are nice to have. They're not. It's not a must, right?
Yes,
So there's that employee entitlement. Last year we got a bonus of 10,000 kwacha. Why aren't having this year? Last year you gave us Valentine's chocolates, and this year you're not. So people understanding that, okay, maybe this year we've got a budget constraint, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? And the nice has been cut off. And that's just life, right? Maybe we can try and do something else. So from an employer perspective, people only thinking the business. From an employee perspective, people being entitled or feeling entitled to the extra nice to have because we've had it, or because these guys have it, therefore why can't we? So people not understanding the business. And I think in both aspects, it's just a lack of communication. That's what it is. I'm a keen advocate for communicating what is happening in the business. I believe in town halls and speaking and explaining where the business is at so that people can understand that, okay, maybe this year my increment might be slightly less because we had a higher ZESCO bill. I don't know. I'm just giving examples, right? People understanding that when costs go up, naturally everything else sort of suffers as well, right? So if we're not turning off our air cons before we're leaving the office, or not, using our water bill wisely, those costs are increasing and they've already been spent. By the time it's time to go sort of give you a bonus at the end of the year, we don't have to spend so much money on other things that could have been sort of saved. And yes, it sounds really mediocre, but every little penny does count. And that's what goes into the pot, for example, bonuses. So I think it's a lack of communication between the organization and employees, but also employees need to understand that people are running a business, and you know, it comes with managing costs. Yeah, that's what it is. And business owners understand that we've got these amazing people who have sacrificed their 8 to 5, and yes, we're paying them, but it'd be very nice to give them a little bit extra. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
I
think
like that.
yeah. Okay.
I like what you're saying, and as both of us are Christians, we come from also a value system and a worldview of based on the Bible. And what comes out is on both ends there would be selfishness, there will be lack of gratitude, there will be a focus on my getting an instant gratification, whether it's the business owner or it's the employee. And those are issues that we can also come to looking at from a Christian value system. How have you used your faith to address certain things, even if you haven't like bashed them and said, you know, you should become a Christian and live a Christian way? But how have your values influenced how you look at people, and how you also train and equip both ends, the management as well as the employees, to recognize that each side has merit and that each one of the players has value and it requires respect, mutual respect, and that mutual sacrifice and humility is key for growth in any family, because a business is ultimately supposed to be a family.
Yeah. Goodness, I pray. I pray.
Amen to that.
I pray for everybody. Everyone must be prayed for and dipped in the Holy Spirit. I think leading by example, I think is very important. I humanness is something that I think is brought upon by God. I'm very sure of that. The humbleness, the humility, the feeling for other people. And in my role, sometimes there are harsh moments where maybe someone has done something wrong against policy. But even as you're communicating that, it doesn't have to be inhuman. It doesn't have to be horrible. You don't have to say words that will break that person, right? You can be very stern, but at the same time lead. And I think let me start with what the difference between a manager and a leader is, right? I think leaders lead with empathy, and that is not, understanding where this person is at. Yes, they've done something wrong, but how can I make them better? Not everything is a train smash. Things can sort of be worked around and stuff. And in there's also an element, and that's where HR comes in. How do we mend the relationship between manager who's really upset with the employee because they've done something wrong or something they're not supposed to do, and make them understand that he's human or she's human and they make mistakes. Depending, of course, the severity of the mistake. I mean, we're not going to excuse someone stealing from a business. Yes, we can forgive them when they've got the dismissal letter. But it's imperative that we always use some kind of understanding that these people are people and they're going to make mistakes, and practice Christianity in the sense that there's forgiveness. And yes, you'll get a slap on the hand, as a verbal warning or written warning or, a hard talk. But in that, we must always try and find ways to grow our employees. And that, I think, is a very Christian value. Forgiveness and understanding this person is a person. The same way I can possibly make a mistake and explaining that to management. The law of management, no, I would never, but then they sort of do other things on their own that are also wrong. But because they're in a position of power, we tend to overlook sometimes certain things because of that. But reminding them and saying, but do you remember last time when I sort of, put this under the carpet, or we had a stern talk about it, but you didn't get a written warning, for example, and the like. So I think it's critical that we lead by example. Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah. And pray against office.
Lots and lots of prayer.
And grace.
Yes. And in your training, having been someone who looks at both ends and having identified the need for growth, have you found that employees are willing to invest their knowledge into organizations when they are invested into? Because one of the challenges training programs have is they are met with resistance because people, leaders feel that employees will not invest the knowledge that they are receiving in that organization, but they will, grow wings and fly away. So how have you selected individuals so that they be people that are willing to invest, or how have you even encouraged employees to invest back into their companies the knowledge that and the training that you would have lobbied for, so that it doesn't become something that is a one-hit wonder? You train people and then fly off, and then no one else gets trained.
One way of that I've noticed that we sort of ensure that employees stay is ensure we get our return on investment, right? On that. So one way that is that we see, for example, that I spent $10,000 on Muonga, right? And I think by that point, as an employee, if you are for them to think of investing that kind of money on you, it means they know there's some level of loyalty, right? They're not going to go spend $10,000 on for example, a resource that we know is high turnover, for example, right? So, and this is where the employee entitlement comes in. As an employee, what are we doing to prove to our employers that I'm worthy of that course? Right. And that if you give me that course, I'm not going to run away. Because whenever we do a needs analysis, everybody's got a very nice training needs analysis. Everyone's all these, no, I want to study my master's and I want to do this. And then they've got, but then in other ways, in other places, you're not showing loyalty to your employer. They're not going to invest because they know that, as you're saying, though, you will run away. Once you get your master's, they're going to thank you, goodbye. So a lot of people, what they do as well is they make employees sign some kind of commitment that they will stay with the business for X amount of years, to ensure that we get our money back. I sort of also don't think that, it sort of defeats the purpose a little bit. But I do understand from business perspective why they do that is because they want to make sure that, they get that 2 years. But are we sure that in those 2 years we'll get what Muonga has learned really, back in the business, or is this really about getting our money back? So it's a bit of a catch-22. I've been in an organization that's invested quite a bit of money for me in terms of coaching. I was coached so well that I got another job. So, do they regret it? No, because again, they believe in growing their people for them. So it was an investment because it's important to Muonga. Does that make sense? And to this day, I will speak highly about that organization today and forever because they invested in me and they saw something in me, and they couldn't obviously offer me anything more because of space and stuff like that. So in their way, their investment has paid off because now they've got a brand ambassador that goes around the whole world talking about what a great place that place to work is. If somebody called me today and says, I've gotten a job here or I've got an interview between this place and this place, I'll say, go to that place without fail. So in that sense, they have sort of paid back or gotten back because they've invested in the employer brand, right? Which is critical for business continuity. So I don't know. That helps. That answers the question.
Is, it's come back to the beginning. Employer brand investing identifying that we are family and we grow together, but we also are accountable, responsible, and they will be disciplined if we don't follow up according to the structures that are set. No, certainly we'll have another chat another time. Thank you so much, Muonga, for this time.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah,
All
it's
right. Thank you
amazing.
so much for your time.
I really loved the focus on the branding because I think that's a mutual relationship. That's where, like you're saying, that you are now in a brand ambassador. So their investment in you has brought about a legacy, so that you always look back at them. And if you were at an organization, you would also be able to go back to them and say, you know what, we can partner with you. These are people whom we partner with. So that continued relationship, the recognition that that relationship is not a once-off, but it can continue for a lifetime, I think will be something that also companies in Africa, where many times people are so bottlenecked, or maybe we can actually talk about it. We are bottlenecked with diaspora fear. I think diaspora anxiety. Trump, America speaks about Trump derangement syndrome. We've got a diaspora derangement syndrome, many respects, where we fear everybody's leaving. Government is fearful of people leaving the country. Organizations are fearful of people leaving them and leaving the country and just taking away. When in fact it's part of the growth. It's part of the journey of growth of the individual. We should have a positive outlook towards it. I'm not sure. In Zambia, do you have a lot of people leaving the country? I know that in Zimbabwe, because of our economic crisis, we have.
Okay. Kind of, but I think I'm also seeing a shipment coming back. And it's purely because they realize that outside is not as good as at home. People are sort of growing and building and stuff like that. But I think it's half and half. I think a lot of folk, are coming back. That's what I'm sensing. I'm not seeing as much as people leaving, saying, okay, look, I'm leaving the country now. I think sort of they're settled and happy with the way we live.
Indeed. There's a beautiful continent and it's called Africa, and it's made up of different countries with people of different tribes and different languages. We are also different in our ethnicity, whether we are white African, Asian African, black African, or we are of mixed race. Whether we were born on the continent or are in the diaspora, Africa is here, available, waiting for you to invest in its future. Remember that as a child of God, God is on our side. He is available, and all we need to do is pray. All we need to do is to seek Him, and He will lead us step by step.